Hi friends, I hope everyone's doing well. The last time I filmed a Collage A Day series videos was back in November of 2024. I'm surprised it's been so long. This time around I'm doing things differently. I typically create small collages using leftover scraps, but as you can see I'm working in a larger sketchbook. This one is 8.5 by 11 inches with an exposed spine. This type of spine helps the sketchbook to lay flat. The only issue I have with this sketchbook is that the pages are perforated, so I need to put a piece of paper behind the page I'm working on. I don't want any liquid glue or paint to seep onto the page behind it. I have mentioned it before in other videos, but I haven't found a similar inexpensive sketchbook. I don't think it's necessary to have an expensive sketchbook for collage sketches. If you're new to my channel, I use my sketchbook to work on a collage idea, a way to unwind, and to use up materials. Not all the artwork in my sketchbooks are finished pieces. This is why I like using inexpensive sketchbooks. It's a personal preference though. Besides this sketchbook, I will work in other ones during this daily practice for this month that are different sizes and types. Also, I'll use leftover scraps as well as larger painted and monoprinted papers and various ephemera. I know this daily practice isn't for everyone. We all have different time constraints and responsibilities that may hinder a daily art practice. I like to share my daily art practice in hopes that you'll be inspired by some of the collages or techniques or even the supplies I'm using. Let's talk about what I'm doing now. You're seeing me glue a layer of torn book pages to the page using matte acrylic medium. This is the first layer of the collage. Also, it helps to strengthen the page, which is 75 pounds. This is another reason why I don't mind working in inexpensive sketchbooks. Layering papers when collaging strengthens the page and adds weight to it. I'll add some music while you watch me finish this layer, and I'll come back to narrate the next step. I could leave this paper as is, but I wanted to try mixing a paint color to match as close as possible to the book's patina. This will lessen the visibility of the text so it's not so obvious. I started by mixing off-white, brown, and black matte acrylic paint. I typically use matte acrylic paint in my sketchbooks because it helps the pages from sticking together. The paint wasn't yellow enough, so I mixed in a small amount of yellow oxide. It helped to make it a closer match, but it didn't have to be exact. I didn't want to apply the paint too thick, so I added some water and used a lighter hand when applying it on top of the book pages. Now that the paint is dried, I pulled some muted color leftover scraps that are mid to dark value. The painted book pages are the light value. I wanted to see how this collage would look with high contrast, so that's why I didn't pull any light value papers. This was part of the design idea, as well as using a horizontal composition. Also, the design will be unbalanced. Keeping with the torn paper theme, I'm tearing these leftover scraps instead of cutting them with scissors. I will only use scissors to cut the edge that will be near the gutter of the sketchbook. Working with only mid to dark values, I had to be extra mindful of color contrast. I didn't want the collage area to read as one large element. You'll see me audition different scraps to check if there's enough color contrast between each one before gluing. Also, I'm being mindful of having elements in different sizes and shapes. This will make the collage design more visually pleasing. I'll add music again at this point and come back for the next step. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that this horizontal composition collage will be unbalanced. This is where I start adding elements in the lower right corner that will help guide this design. I won't be adding elements to the top area of the collage. That would cause the design to be balanced, which is not what I want. The design of the horizontal composition doesn't have to be so obvious. The main grouping of the elements visually read as horizontal. If I continue the elements downward from the mid-tone grayish rectangle element on the left, then this composition would not be horizontal. Same with the elements in the lower right. If I take the elements up along the right side of the page, then it would not be considered a horizontal composition. I like to include grayscale versions of my collages even if they're not finished artwork, so you can see the different values more clearly. You can easily see the high contrast in the color version, but I wanted to include a grayscale version as well. I almost forgot to mention that I'll be grouping 4 to 5 daily collages together in a video instead of posting daily. I don't have time to edit videos every day, so grouping a few days together is doable. Let's go on to day 2. I kept up the same sketchbook for this day since I had a larger design in mind and had extra time to work on it. This collage will be similar to yesterday's in that I'm collaging the ground, then applying paint on top of it, then collaging on top of those 2 layers. Right now I'm pulling leftover scraps for the ground layer. I'm not too concerned about if these papers will go together, but how they will look after I apply the paint on top of them. I'm using the leftover matte medium from yesterday's collage. I will apply it on top of each element to help seal those papers because I'll be painting on top of this layer. Since the painted papers are unsealed, I wanted to see if this will lessen any smearing when I'm applying paint on top. For a slight difference from yesterday's collage, I'm not gluing these papers to the top edge of the page. I want to see how it will look with this design choice. I don't know how the final collage will look, so that's why I'm creating it in a sketchbook. If I don't like it at all or need to make changes to the design, I can use this collage as a reference. I'll put on music while you watch me finish this layer and come back for the next step. I brought out a brayer and small gel plate for the next step, which is applying the paint layer. I wanted to see if I liked using a brayer instead of a brush to apply the paint. My goal is to have this paint layer not so heavy. I want some of the paint underneath it to show through. As I was painting, I changed the design because I like how the cluster of elements along the left edge looked. I decided not to cover them. This change guided me to a different design. Next, I brought out black paint that I applied with a cardboard roll only to the right side of the collage. I'm going to add a similar grouping of elements in this area, but I wanted to differentiate it slightly from the other grouping on the left side. The group of elements on the left side are vertical, so I'm mimicking that for the elements in this area. I brought out my box of leftover scraps to find similar papers that could be options for this grouping of elements. To add some unevenness to the design, I'm only leaving the left side of the black circles visible and collaging to the right of it. There are a few things I like about this sketch and a few things I'd like to change. If I recreate this collage, I will apply the paint up to the blank paper but not on it. I like that you see some of the painted paper underneath the paint more than the blank paper. Also, I like that the black circles are only under the right side elements. I like that there are only two groups of elements and that they're vertically shaped, but I'm not sure if I want each group to be wider or not. Here's the grayscale version, another high contrast collage. Let's go on to day 3. This is an altered book sketchbook that only has a few blank pages left. I applied off-white paint to those pages, so I'm starting with a somewhat blank page. I pulled various types of scraps. Some are transparent papers that are either painted or stamped, and altered bleeding tissue paper. I'm starting with cutting 2 pieces of this blue altered bleeding tissue paper. I love the look of layering transparent papers on top of non-transparent papers, like this blackish gray scrap. Paper that's either mid-tone or dark value works best under transparent paper because it's easier to see. It gives a good layering effect. When I put light value papers under transparent papers, it's usually because the light value is needed in that area of the collage to balance the design. I typically only put small sections of the paper underneath. Light value papers are hard to see under transparent papers, so it's a bit of a waste to layer too much of it. This light value paper is visible because the transparent paper is on the lighter side. I'm using more of the leftover matte medium from yesterday's collage to glue the scraps into place. I go back and forth about using gloss or matte medium with transparent papers in my collage practice. I do prefer to use matte medium in my sketchbook for the same reason I prefer to use matte acrylic paint. It helps the pages from not sticking together. I'm using more of this pinky red light value paper to start to balance the design. As you will see, I use it a few more times. Same with this black pattern monoprinted paper. I'm using it to balance with the blackish gray element in the lower left. This gray paper is mid-tone value. This side of the collage has light and dark value elements, so a mid-tone value is needed. As I continue to build this collage, I'm looking to add elements in different sizes and shapes, like this small light orange element. A good design collage has elements in different sizes and shapes, as well as ones with different values. You'll see me using the same paper but changing the size and shape of it. This will help to balance the design color-wise and add cohesiveness. I'll add music while you watch me finish this collage, and I'll come back to review it. I really like the layering of different elements, especially the simple uneven black lines transparent paper. It's a bold element on top of other papers as well as when it's on its own. This collage has a color combination I usually don't use, but I like it. Light orange and pinky red elements against mid-tone and dark value blues, grays, and black elements. I love the texture of the light blue ultra tissue paper. It pairs nicely with the other painted papers. Here's the grayscale version. The contrast between the light and dark values is very strong. Let's continue to day 4. I kept out the Altered Book sketchbook for this next collage. The papers on the right side are the ones that I made by wiping off my brayer while monoprinting. You can get some really interesting collage papers by doing this. I pulled papers that lean towards a grungier look. Also, I pulled more transparent papers. Even though I knew I wanted to use a grungier color palette, I didn't have a design thought out ahead of time, but it did help to balance whatever papers I did pull in areas around the sketchbook. This is a good way to work out a design if you don't have one going into a sketching session. Think about what constitutes a good design, such as balancing similar color elements, along with having all 3 values and variety of elements in different sizes and shapes. Also, I'm still using the leftover matte medium as glue. This olive green transparent paper is made by painting watercolor on tissue paper. Can't remember if I used gift tissue paper or art tissue paper. I have a couple of videos about making and using acrylic paint tissue paper that I'll link in the description area. I created this tissue paper after filming those videos. I'm using it in this sketchbook to see how it works on a collage. I wasn't sure if the watercolor would bleed too much when gluing it onto the surface. This brown transparent paper was created the same way. Again, I don't remember what type of tissue paper I used. It did bleed out a bit at the top, but it wasn't bad. I made a mental note to make sure only to apply the adhesive on the actual tissue paper. Don't over apply it onto the rest of the surface. This will cause the watercolor to bleed off the tissue paper. This stamped transparent paper is deli paper and the stamp is handmade. Let me know if you'd be interested in a video on how to make handmade stamps. As I continue to add layers, I'll add music and come back to review the finished collage. I really love this grungy layer collage. The things that I like are the texture in the brown transparent paper, also the contrast between the watercolor tissue paper and the black stamped deli paper. Here's the grayscale version. As you can see, it's mostly dark value. I'm glad I added the 2 light lavender elements to bring in some light value and to balance with the light lavender element that I glued down first. Let's continue on to day 5, which will be the last one for this video. This is the last spread in my Altered Book sketchbook. For the design, I'm continuing to use transparent along with non-transparent papers. Also, I'm playing around with the idea of layering 2 different types of transparent papers. I'm gluing down most of the stamped deli paper and altered bleeding tissue paper now. I'm leaving the sides and the bottom sections unglued because I want to add more papers underneath those areas. I'm continuing to use a muted color palette, navy, black, brown, and burgundy. These colors will help keep the transparent papers as the focal point. I felt that this collage needed a bit more light value besides just the yellow reddish bleeding tissue paper element. This black and white striped paper will partially add a light value. This paper was created by applying a layer of absorbent ground first, then acrylic paint. I have a video showing how to create these types of papers that I'll link in the description area. I'm constantly checking the painted papers underneath the transparent papers to make sure I like how it looks before gluing it into place. It didn't show it because I sped up the video, but it took a lot of time to decide if I wanted to add this wavy burgundy paper. It's close in color to the red in the bleeding tissue paper. I ended up gluing it down and using it in one more location. My thought process was that adding it as a small element will not distract from the bleeding tissue paper focal point. It will complement it. At this point, I'll add music and come back to review the final collage. I really like this collage, from the transparent papers to the muted, grungier color palette to the overall design. Watch out for the next video, which will include days 6 through 10. I'm pushing myself to speed up my editing process. I hope you got something out of this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Take care.